All right, welcome everybody. So in this video, I want to keep on working with the storms data set from the dplyr package and look at the structure of the data that is being stored in that data set. So if you've been following the previous videos using the Colab notebook, which is linked in the description of this video, then you should not need to run any of the previous code cells. You should be good to go. If you're just watching this video and you haven't run any of the previous code cells, in order for this to work, you're going to need to load the dplyr package. So you're going to need to run a command that says library dplyr, and you might see some warning messages about, well, that look like this. Well, they're disappeared. You can ignore any warning messages that you might see, and then you'll be good to go. And then you'll have access to the storms data set. And we're working with storms data. The first 6 rows of the data set look like this. And we want to be careful. So when we're working with data, you might think, great, year, this is not a continuous variable. So you at least like you might not be thinking of year as a continuous variable. Like you go from 1974 or 1975, and then the next is 1976, and then 1977, and so on. You might think of months also as a discrete variable. 6, the month goes from 6, the month goes to 7, the month goes to 8, and so on. And so sometimes you might think that your data should be stored as one data type, but it's actually being stored as another data type. And so we've talked about how you can check the data types by running some commands. We've talked about the typeof function. We've used that earlier as another way of checking the data type of a function. So let's kind of see how we can use the typeof function on a data frame. And so one thing I want to mention is that if I want to refer to just one column of a data frame, so for example, let me just kind of break this up into 2 code cells. Okay, so we talked about the typeof function, and we can do typeof on a single thing. So if I want to check what type is 1.0, that is a decimal. If I want to check what is the type of 2, it assumes that a number, even if it looks like an integer 2, it assumes that that is actually a decimal, that it's being stored as a double. So if you want something to be stored as an integer, then we type in L after it. So if I wanted 2 to be stored as an integer, then I would need to type in L after it, and now it's being stored as an integer. If I don't put an L after it, it's going to default it to a decimal. Hello is a character, true is a logical. Okay. If I want to check vectors, and those vectors are an individual variable in a larger data frame, then what I would do is I first enter the name of the data frame, which is storms in our case here. And if I want to check, okay, what type of variable is status, which is this thing over here, then I first enter the name of the data frame, followed by a $sign. Then I enter the name of the variable. So I'm going to run the typeof function on these 3 different variables here. So let's take a look at what comes out. So this is telling me that the type of variable for year, for example, here's year. It's being stored as a decimal. That makes sense. We can see that over here. That matches up with what we see from the various outputs that we saw earlier. This is telling me that the stuff being stored in the name vector, which is this first column over here, the data type here are characters, and that matches up with what we saw in some of our previous output. This status variable, this is the one that seems like a little funky. Um, this is being stored as something that's called a factor. And so it looks like all of these values seem like characters, right? These are strings of letters, but it's telling me that these things are integers. And the reason why, if I scroll up over here, if we take a look at the summary output, status, when I look at the summary of status, what's happening is it's counting up how many observations in our data frame are of each of these statuses. So it's actually counting up how many observations are a tropical storm, and each of these counts are integers. And so that's why it's telling me that status is a data type integer, because the summary is telling me how many it's counting, how many occur in each of these, each class of the variable. So the status variable is being stored as kind of a different data type from the name, which is being stored as a character, something that we'll kind of be mindful of here. And yeah, so just to kind of reiterate something that's really important, and that is when we want to extract just one variable, one column of a data frame, we want to get some information about an individual column from a data frame, then the syntax is we first enter the name of the data frame. In this case, the name of the data frame is storms. Then we type a $sign. Then we type the name of the column name or the variable, which might be status, it might be year, it might be name. Okay, so we'll stop this video here and we'll pick up how we can investigate data types of columns with the is functions.